And we are live. Good morning to everybody who's catching us here. It is return of me from the one day of holiday that you did catch me going for. I did go and celebrate Labor Day with a pillow at the base of my head, just to try and recuperate. I know you all haven't seen me for a bit of time since last week Friday. But I am back. I have to sometimes just recharge the batteries. Vernon, how are you doing, my brother?
We're doing well. There's been so much progress. Labor Day and whatnot will feel refreshed after the whole long weekend.
Okay, so we're into one third of the year. I mean, that's it. That's everyone needs to understand. We've consumed a third of the year. Now, it doesn't mean all is lost. Okay, that's all. It doesn't mean this. It just means you've got about 2/3 of the year remaining. There's more thirds of the year than has been consumed. You've lost 120 days, but there's still 120, 100 or 240. 244 more days to go. So, what are you going to do with the remaining 244? There's a Bible verse we were reading, Vernon, recently, where Paul said, I do not look to the past, I reach forward. That's what I want as many of you to all do now. Do not look to the past 120 days that you've lost. Reach forward to the 240 that you got remaining to do as much as you can. You can do a lot if you stretch yourself, if you condition yourself, if you take the lessons and say what has been lost during this period, what savings opportunities have I missed out on, what investment opportunities have I missed out on. May is coming soon. There's a day called Star Wars Day, which is gonna be on Thursday. And it's called May the 4th. And if you've watched Star Wars, where it says May the Force be with you, so therefore May the 4th be with you. That is going to be the push that you want to try and get into. May the 4th be with you. So now let's get down into what's been happening, Vernon. Yesterday on Sunday, we got an announcement by the Energy Regulation Board that pump prices for petrol stayed exactly the same, even though we did see on the second half of the month we did see lower prices for petrol coming in, but we did see a much stronger kwacha. They did read that in the previous price review of April 2023, prices for petrol, diesel, and kerosene in the international markets were $89.60 and $98.83 and 96.04 respectively, compared to $93, $95, and $92. So what we're seeing is that when it comes to petrol prices, they did see the prices come down in terms of international petrol prices. They did see diesel prices also come down just a smidge, down just about 3% as well. And they also did see kerosene prices go up. That was what happened, respectively, for May 2023 price review. Movements. They did say, let's just revise that. We did see petrol prices going up, and we did see diesel prices coming down. We did see petrol prices going up, diesel prices coming down, and kerosene prices coming down. The movements represent an increase in 3.84% for petrol and a reduction of 3.61% for diesel and 3.46% for kerosene, respectively. Generally, there's been a decline in oil prices in the international market during the period under review. This actually does speak to the fact that refineries are probably pumping out a bit higher prices. And also, there's probably transportation costs, but that should have been lower by now. The factors that caused the decline in oil prices during that time has also been an increase in supply, though America has been suffering with a lower supply. Though I think what they're underplaying here is the risk of recession. That has actually been one of the key drivers to lower oil prices. It's been the risk of recession from poor U.S. earnings and some sort of scary data that we're starting to see, especially with the fact that in America, you're seeing J.P. Morgan buying First Republic Bank. You're starting to see a lot of shakes in the banking sector. And it's starting to look like there's going to be a second wave of regional banks that are going to start failing, as opposed to just the general big banks in the USA. So I think that's going to be the main that's the main driver that's pushing oil prices. They also did say that meanwhile the kwacha did appreciate against the dollar with a monthly average of 18.47 versus the previous average of 20.63. The appreciation was mainly against the United States dollar was attributable to increased inflows of forex and positive sentiment of continued debt restructuring talks, which unfortunately reversed towards the end, and we are losing that kind of steam. And the combined effect obviously did not push the trigger. It wasn't enough for the Energy Regulation Board, though I'm wondering, even from my perspective, it was showing that at least there was a 4%. So I did think that I'll be honest here. Statistically, it does look like they did make the wrong call. That they could have actually reduced, because if you're looking at a 10% decline in the currency versus a 3% increase in the cost, that actually increase in the US dollar cost, that actually does trigger about a 6 to 7% change. So what math is being used is beyond me. But anyway, that's they're the ones with the power, they're the ones with the abilities. But I do think mathematically they made the wrong call, because even judging by their own their own statement, Vernon, they are saying that if the barrel price, for example, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of the finished goods price, if they're saying that in dollars, the petrol price went up 3.6% or 3.86%, which is what they're saying here. But the kwacha in general has gotten stronger by 10.47%. Then the math is actually indicating, Vernon, that it has probably gotten to a point where that it is much, it's much, it is much bigger than a 2.5% reduction, which should have triggered it. So, because I'm writing here, what they've said is that the combined effect of the reduction of the international prices and the appreciation of the kwacha was favorable to the domestic prices. This resulted in a downward adjustment of diesel and kerosene, but with the above, because they were above the 2.5% trigger. However, the price of petrol has maintained, because the wholesale price wholesale price movement is within the 2.5% trigger threshold. So once again, that falls into question, although we'll break it down a bit further. Other news, Vernon, that did come out over the week was the announcement that there is now consultation work starting to be done on the budget for 2024. So they are starting to open up consultations for the budget for 2024, because now they're going to try and look for things. This was the announcement given. Then I'm going to go through 8 recommendations, which I'm going to keep talking about regularly to get people there, things I'm going to be sharing and things I'm going to try and put through as well. But here was the announcement given.
Is hereby notified that the government, through the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, has commenced the preparation of the 2024 national budget and the 2024-2026 medium-term expenditure framework. The budget and the medium-term expenditure framework are important economic tools that shape the direction of economic policy and developmental priorities through an all-inclusive process. To this end, the National Planning will be conducting broad-based consultation on the 2024 national budget and the 2024 to 2026 medium-term expenditure framework. Members of the general public, private sector, government departments, civil society, the youth, women, interest groups, and all other stakeholders are hereby invited to submit their tax, non-tax revenue and expenditure proposals for review and possible inclusion in the 2024 national budget and 2024-2026 medium-term expenditure framework.
Right, so that was the announcement that was given by the Secretary of the Treasury regarding the fact that we are working on our budget framework and we're working on things. And they say, look, give us your proposals. What do you expect for us to be able to do to be able to help turn the process forward? Now, I don't know, let me put it to you this way, Vernon, before I get kickstarted. What do you think our dear government should actually be working on during this period? Or what do you think you should be in the next budget in terms of taxes or expenditures they should be working on?
I think it's issues of money. Essentially, they have to be strongly built on planning, especially if you're dealing with public resources and you have people that you're owing huge sums of amounts of money. So primarily in the budget, I know they have quite a people who are quite dependent on them, but in the long run, as much as you're channeling more money to the people, there's little gain that you're getting from the people through the cash transfers, CDFs. There's little money or little more returns and multiplication of the money. So I prefer they can target a bit more on ventures or projects that are going to generate more money for them, more projects that are going to bring in, multiplying money activities like that. Maybe, places like maybe dual carriageway, toll gates that are going to give revenue back and grow the money in the long in the more opportunities for more people who can invest and for government so they can be able to restructure the debts, because the debt will only, the ideology of restructuring debt is not working for me. I don't know what kind of mathematics is being done, but borrowing more money so you can pay more back other dates is not really essential for me. So I'd feel the debt restructuring should be in a way targeted in the budget, and also create more sustainable, passive, projects that are going to create more revenue, multiply whatever we already have in the coffers, so that we can have more or rather enough money to be paying back, even in bits, but we are paying back. That is what is, very important. And see how we can possibly stimulate the economy so that we can have more economic activities in the country. I want to trust and believe, according to what I have come, across, that the more we have production in the country, the more we have our own monies generated locally through maybe exports and whatnot, we'll be able to at least find ourselves in a better position just in contributing towards the growth of the economy in the country, unlike solely depending on investors who do their money, do their transactions, make investments, build their profits, and still revert back to wherever. They're just but investing. They're here for business, and when they do their gains, they leave. So I prefer we can invest in local, in the local market, invest in the local people, so they can have that economic activity, production wise, manufacturing, businesses, stimulate them in a way that they'll be able to give us more stance, more stability. And once we grow the momentum locally of just being able to finance and be able to grow our economy, I think that should probably be some of the focuses and areas that the government could possibly include as they are working towards budgeting once again, or rather in the budget, so that we can grow and really not rely. I think the reliance, of course, it's okay to have ties with other people. We're landlocked and interlinked and whatnot, but relying more on other people, I think, is not helping us, and we should do more on us and gain leverage against others, and not people having to have leverage and more control over us through monies because we borrow too much and whatnot.
There's something there, Vernon. We're talking about investing in the people so that we can generate more. Because let's talk about exactly what that is. I want to try and avoid vagueness here. What we're trying to say is that the government should rely more on tax than it should rely on debt. Okay, if it's going to start doing public services, the government should be funded more by tax than debt, the way Switzerland operates, where the government allows the entrepreneurial society to develop, grow, and build, and the government then taxes them and does public services. Now, they don't have to tax them highly, they just tax them and do public services. Actually, Switzerland even has a law that the government is not allowed to run a deficit budget. They can't run a deficit budget unless they're in a recession, and they have to rebalance that and bring the money back. So Switzerland actually pays down its debt, and it's in a constitutional surplus. And I think other countries have controlled how much of a deficit their governments can go into. I think Germany only says that the government is only allowed to go into a deficit equal to 0.1%, if I'm correct, of their GDP. It's a number very close to there. The point I'm trying to say is that if we're going to reorganize the way our government behaves, we're going to need to reorganize the way our people view it as well, because our government can start saying, okay, fine, we're going to start sticking to the basics, which I believe they should, but then the people are so used to being spoon-fed. Because already, let me give you a simple example, Bennett. When the government took away the fuel subsidies, what was the reaction? It wasn't, well, now they're doing the right thing. Oh, no, bring them back. Automatically, you see, it is the mentality of the people which you have to circumvent. This is the real price of fuel in Zambia, given the supply chains that we have. This is the real price, but we don't want to pay it. Okay, the reality is we don't want to pay the real prices. We don't want to pay the actual price of the things that we're facing. When the government doesn't go in and intervene in the milli meal market, and they allow it to run because they're going to say, look, we need to export. The price gets to 200. We all start crying and complaining again. By the way, so again, you see the issues here. In as much as we can say theoretically that the government should be sticking to taking care of the people, should be sticking to running the services, and then allowing the people to actually become more of an asset than to sit on the liabilities column of the country. Are the people ready to start doing that? Because I think the people have become accustomed to a government who subsidizes almost everything they can, who hides as many costs as they can. They've become accustomed to this. Okay, this is the nature. Two, Vernon, NAPSA has distributed 1.7 billion kwacha worth of benefits recently, just in the last 4 months. Zambia National Provident Fund payment, and 900 million now, by the way, 900 million kwacha worth of payments that have been done to the that have been done in pre-retirement lump sums that people have gone to withdraw, that 20% withdrawal. The question, Vernon, is what will that do to reflect in the economy? Are the people savvy enough to actually turn that into business activities and equity investments, or are the people going to just eat all of it? Yeah, this is the question. Okay, because you can talk about the people all we want, but the biggest problem in this country is not even the government. The government is a reflection of the people. If the people keep behaving the way we do, then the government will keep being the exact way it is. You can't keep pointing the finger at the government when you're doing the same things. In fact, you are the trigger to this. You're the cause this is happening. So until the people start to get their heads together, you can sit there and toss as many comments as you want about the government. But until people get serious, you know how I know this, Vernon? Whenever people ask for, whenever I ask people, okay, what do you want the government to do? And this is what I'm going to get to. People will say, the government must provide an enabling environment. I always ask people, what does that mean? What is the definition of an enabling environment? Because you don't do anything. Even if the government enabled the environment, quote unquote, in your phantom sense, you're not doing anything. That's the difference. And you can say that as much as you want. You know how I know the enabling environment sentence is always gobbledygook, Vernon? Is because people who actually run businesses, people who actually do things, have got specific policies. The president was visiting, I think it was Serenge recently, and he was asking the business community there, what can we do? When they stood up, they gave him specific policies. How long is Zema taking to do things? We've got a problem here that Zema is saying when we're mining close to a water source, one is saying 50 meters, the other one, the mines community, is saying 200 meters. Can you correct that? That is a proper prescription of a person who's actually economically active. But a person who's not is going to say, we need an enabling environment. The economy has to do better. They speak in very ghost terms. They don't tell you specifics of what needs to be improved. That's how you can tell a person who's not doing much. Okay? They're going to tell you very vague things. So now I'm going to give you 8 prescriptions that I think need to be done to this based on the work that I do in the entrepreneurship and investment space to try and help improve the outcomes of this country. And here's some things that I think need to be worked on. 1, turnover tax threshold needs to be revisited from 800,000 kwacha to 2.64 million kwacha, and a law needs to be put in place to index that threshold up with inflation. The reason is this, Vernon. The turnover tax threshold is meant to allow small businesses a lower tax base to be able to continue to thrive. Now, in 2012, the turnover tax threshold was 800,000, but it has not been, and in 2002, it was 200,000. By 2012, it was adjusted upwards specifically because of it was adjusted upwards specifically because the inflation impacts of life between 2002 and 2012. So they had to adjust it upwards so that the small business community could actually feel a better one. This actually helped, by the way. And I think that this administration should try and do that as well so that the smaller business community have a bigger space to run. 2.64 million kwacha worth of business activity is exactly, and I'm using 2.64 million kwacha, not because it's a number I've taken out of my mind. It's actually the inflation adjusted amount of 800,000. Okay, so what I'm really trying to say is the exact same production activity. Here's why I'm saying this. Imagine a butcher, Vernon. Imagine you're a butcher and you are running a business and you are thinking, okay, back in the days, 800,000 kwacha worth of business. How much of that in chicken? Back then, let's say you're selling chickens, okay? Or you were selling cut up chickens. 800,000 kwacha worth of chicken sold. It was about 400 a year worth of chicken sold was about 44,000 chickens. That's how much you were selling. 44,000 kg of chicken you were selling a year. When you divide that, Vernon, by the number of months, for example, if you divide that by the number of working days, let's say, that was about 122 kgs worth of chicken that you were selling a day. Now, if you translate that to today's cost, price of chicken maybe has gone up almost 5-fold. But let's even do it as a threefold adjustment. That means that now you're looking at a business that's selling 40 kgs of chicken versus 120 kgs of chicken. Vernon, those are drastically different businesses. A person selling 120 kgs of chicken has got an assistant. They maybe have someone doing the books in the back, and they've got a bit of equipment to move around. A person selling 40 kgs is a single person at a stand. Now, what you are doing is you're asking a person who's a single person at a stand to operate their business, manage their inventory, and comply with taxes that are a bit more complicated, and also to deal with taxes that are a little bit higher. So the reason I'm saying this is let's adjust this thing for inflation. And it does two things. If the turnover tax threshold is also adjusted for inflation, the government also now has an incentive not to really not tamper with inflation by printing money too much. Because sometimes when the government prints too much money, they can get that money back through taxes. Okay, so because what the government does is they inflate the cost of things, they get the money back through taxes. If you index the turnover tax rate every single year according to inflation, therefore that production level is always protected. And the government will have an incentive to ensure that businesses are growing in a real sense and not in a nominal sense where it's mainly inflation doing the growth, but it's not actual business activity growth. That's a specific thing. Okay.
Yeah.
You understand where I'm saying it's a specific thing. So the turnover tax threshold, by the way, turnover tax threshold is the amount of revenue that a business can generate, where underneath that revenue, it pays a flat tax of 4%. Okay, versus the actual corporate taxes where it's paying VAT and it's paying income tax. It'll just be paying a flat tax of 4%. This helps these businesses grow a bit more and do a bit. This helps these businesses do a bit better. So this is something that we should actually consider, especially for SME policy. That's a specific one because it gives a lot more small businesses room to run. And some people don't like going above the 800,000 kwacha income base, and they stay as boutique businesses that don't hire anyone, Vernon, because they don't want to graduate into higher taxes. Nobody wants to pay higher taxes. Okay, that is the reality. There's no incentive for this. Okay. The second policy that I am looking for is that GRZ bond coupons must join Lusa dividends in becoming tax-free for retail investors, or at least for retirees. If you're going to retire utilizing bond coupons to live off, they should spare you the taxes. Okay, and therefore retirees also therefore should be given that. But in general, GRZ bond coupons should join Lusa dividends. Lusaka Securities or publicly traded companies, when they pay a dividend to shareholders, if that's a retail shareholder, there's no withholding tax. If that's a company shareholder, there's withholding tax. So in terms of GRZ bond coupons, everybody is subject to a 15% withholding tax and a 1% BOZ handling fee. So perhaps what we can do for GRZ coupons, we should actually be requesting to encourage more people to be able to utilize them and hold them. Can we remove the 15% withholding tax from the retail investor, specifically the retail investor? Look, the reality, Vernon, is that retail investors only hold 3% of GRZ bonds anyway. Okay, so it's not going to make a mountain of difference. We're talking about 6 billion kwacha worth of bonds. Average coupon being paid is 12%. If we're removing that, we're really just asking the government to pay us to end up with about a 60 million. It's going to cost the government 60 million more in terms of it's going to cost them in 60 million or in taxes that they wouldn't be able to get. In fact, 90 million, in taxes that they wouldn't be able to get. But let's be honest here. At the end of the day, and the retail investors mostly hold 2, 3, and 5-year bonds. Majority of retail investors are holding 2, 3, and 5-year bonds. With an average coupon of 10%, you're really just now withholding that 10% on the 6 billion is 600 million. Therefore, the 15% withholding tax would be 90 million kwacha versus the 180 billion budgets that we're seeing. What's that? Okay, it's not going to cost the government too much, but it is going to start improving financial inclusion. We're not saying banks should be getting tax-free coupons. We're not saying insurance companies, pension funds, all those ones. In fact, pension funds should actually get tax-free coupons to a degree. They should actually be getting tax-free coupons. But the majority of bonds are held by offshore investors, big institutions, and big banks. They're holding about 70% of it. Let them pay the withholding tax, and even companies as well. But let the individuals who have the guts to decide to try and hold government bonds, and maybe some of the pension funds, be exempt from paying withholding tax on their bond coupons. That's one I would like to actually see going forward. See, again, Vernon, specific, okay? I would like to see tax incentives for big businesses and multinationals to do business with youth and women-owned businesses. I've actually seen that we may encourage by word these businesses to do business with youth and women-owned business. Because Vernon, if you're a young entrepreneur, in as much as you want and as much as you want all these loans and everything, the number one thing you actually need as a young entrepreneur is customers. You need access to market. You need sales. I can give you a loan as a business, but if you have no sales on the other side of that loan, now I've given you a blessing which is going to turn into a curse, because the day you have to repay that money back, you're in trouble. You've got no sales to pay it back with. So perhaps how do we encourage the big businesses to stop outsourcing only to other big businesses, but to look to smaller businesses? By simply saying, what percentage of your contracts are going towards youth and women-owned entrepreneurs? In that regard, we can then give you a discount on your taxes. This is why I'm saying corporate taxes can come down. Look, here's the reality, Vernon. In developed countries, corporate taxes are 21%. I know people don't like hearing that. Okay. In developed countries, corporate taxes are 21%. If we have good citizen big companies who can adhere to a few things like environmental policy, all those things, well, we can bring them down closer to like 25%. And what I'm simply saying is that let's try and bring them down, but on condition. What percentage of your contracts that you are issuing out for suppliers, what percentage of those are going towards, you have to be a certain size of a business first, perhaps probably a business that generates about 10 to 20 million in revenue first. And then the question is, what percentage of your income is going to, of your, not your income, your contracts that you're issuing out, what percentage of those are going towards small and youth and women-owned businesses? So for example, let's say you're a bank and you want to have birthday cakes done for your people, okay? Are you going, you can go to a big fancy hotel or someone, or find an SME that is owned by a woman or owned by a young person and do business with them. And then you can then say, right, can we get a tax discount? Can we start offering big businesses tax discounts? Because they are capitalists. They will chase tax discounts. If it means finding youth entrepreneurs to start doing business with, guess what, Vernon? They will start doing it. If it means women-owned entrepreneurs start doing business with, they will start having that as well. Perhaps if you have a radio station that's owned and run by a woman, then, then you can find that when that company does business with your radio station, they can put that on their credits profile to see if they can reach it. You will see big businesses aggressively trying to do business with youth-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. And you see a lot more competition that way. Just a simple number, Vernon, like if you say 35% of your contracts, if you can get businesses to take 35% of their contracts to young and SME businesses, that's a huge stimulus in the economy. Simultaneously, if we can do the same thing to banks, banks are getting charged 35 or 30% on their profits. If you tell a bank, look, if 30% of your loan portfolio is sitting with SMEs, then perhaps we can try and even bring down, because right now 90% of loan portfolios are sitting with big businesses and government and maybe individuals. But if 30% of your business loan portfolio is going towards the SME community, perhaps then we can consider a tax discount for banks as well. So that's the fourth one that I'm actually going to be talking about. And I'm going to go through a lot of these in detail over the weeks to come. I do think that the graduated tax system for small businesses, the one that the UPND did campaign on back in 2019, that should be introduced. Now, Vernon, they campaigned specifically on saying, however much tax and licensing fees you are due to pay in the first year of your business, you will pay 0% of that. You'll be waived from everything. In the second year of your business, only 25%. So if your tax liability, let's say, is 5,000 kwacha, you will only pay 1,250 kwacha. So you only pay 25%. In the third year, 50%. In the next year, 75%. So if your licensing fees, let's say with local government or with your regulator, is 10,000 kwacha. In your first year, you pay 0. In the second year, you pay 2,500 kwacha. And that's what you keep doing going forward. So that's policy number 5 that I've looked at. Number 6, I've got 2 more to go. Don't worry. Number 6 is I think there should be a cap on all regulatory fees. All statutory and regulatory fees for doing business, Vernon, should be subject to what I call the means test. The average entrepreneur, according to the Money FM survey, starts their business with 5,000 kwacha. At best, maybe they start their business with 20,000 kwacha. There was a survey done, but we looked at the median. The median entrepreneur, according to the 2020 Money FM entrepreneurship survey, 2019-2020 Money FM entrepreneurship survey, we found that the average entrepreneur was starting with 5,000 kwacha. Now we can bump that up to 10,000. So the question, Vernon, is if we're charging licensing fees for you to enter an industry of 20,000 kwacha, and then you only have a startup budget of 10,000, what are we telling you? We're telling you to either go borrow money to start that business or not start that business. We're blocking you. Then we're going around talking out the other side of our mouths saying we encourage entrepreneurship in Zambia. Psst, keep them out, keep the fees up and keep them out. That's exactly what we're doing. So regulatory fees need to be means tested. Regulators should not be making money on fees, upfront fees. They should be making money on percentage activities. Okay, all regulators must find a way to make money on percentage activities and must not charge higher than a means test. If they're going to charge fees, they should only be charging according to according to an amount that fits into a budget, not the full 5,000. It must fit into a statutory budget. So there must be a cap on all regulators' fees to force them to be more innovative with the way they raise money. Because regulators, those guys all live lavish lives. In most of the regulatory institutions, most of those guys they're getting paid much higher. They're getting paid as a high in some of these areas. Yes, and some of them are not going to like me for saying this. But they cannot try to live the life of a private sector practitioner based on fees charged on people. That's not fair. Okay, they must also become creative with the way they make their money, and the majority of their money must come from activities. And I know, yes, this can sometimes create a problem because wedding the regulator towards business activity might force them to be more growth oriented. But yes, I'm sure there's a way we can balance this out. Because right now, Vernon, our biggest problem is not the corruption of the business sector. It's there. There are things we should fight. I truly believe that. That's what we have courts for. But the biggest problem Zambia has is unemployment and underemployment. And regulatory fees, licensing fees, city council fees, all these fees that somebody has to pay to start a business are the exact reason why so many people are kept out of becoming job creators than actually helping the economy. So we need to put a cap on regulatory fees to allow people to operate more freely. 7, Vernon, I think higher education loans should be extended to colleges and not just universities. I think people should be allowed, Vernon, if you want to get a student loan, it shouldn't just be that you're restricted to the 5 universities who keep on increasing their fees and people are coming out with 200,000 kwacha of student debt. You should be allowed to get a student loan, maybe to do a 3-year diploma course so that you can get into the labor market with much lower cost. That would actually improve the student debt problem. If we actually extended it to degrees and diplomas, certificates and diplomas, so that people could actually be able to get through. Now, I know CDF does cover that, but it'd also be good if Helsby also covered that as well, okay, just to also support it, so that people are not pushing for loans only at very high and expensive levels. Because what that's doing is that 500 million kwacha that's being drilled through Helsby is, or even more, that 500 million kwacha is actually ending up pushing up the fees of these mainstream colleges, because they're saying, look, the cost of operating to take in that many students is actually higher. So we need to keep increasing our fees. So it's doing nothing but creating higher education inflation. But if you spread it into the college, into the diploma and the college realms, that would actually help with the student debt problem that's actually starting to rise. And about 10 years, we're going to have a serious issue. Student debt's going to become one of the biggest issues. And it already is. It's already a huge issue, to the point where somebody was holding up a placard saying these payments are killing us. I'm telling you right now, Vernon, in 10 years' time, we're going to have a serious problem with the generation that has just consumed this many student loans. And finally, Vernon, I think there should be tax incentives for companies to give out scholarships. There should be some sort of tax incentive for companies who give out 0.5% of their income in scholarships. I remember I used to see this at my old college, where if you wanted a scholarship, you went to the office of, and they can do this through Helsby, by the way. You can just create a centralized database with Helsby of companies who are offering scholarships, and allow Helsby to now also start administering corporate scholarships. So you could go to the back end of the university, and they'll tell you we don't offer as many scholarships anymore, but we have these companies we've partnered with who are actually offering scholarships, and then you can apply to these companies. If we can start to create a nice centralized
Yeah.
system of companies getting scholarships, giving out scholarships, and incentivize them to all at least remit about 0.5 to about 1% of their income towards college scholarships, we can drive a lot more people through the grade 12 system above that into diplomas and into degrees, and therefore start giving out scholarships specifically to help develop the economy. You see, Vernon, what we mean by specific. Okay? Do you see what we mean when we talk about not this vague word, enabling environment, specific? You see what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Now, I'll give you your 2 cents before we move on to the final conversation point of today, before we get into the end.
I was running on social media just yesterday, and I saw quite a number of photos of young people at the University of Zambia celebrating that they have been granted meal allowances, and they were
Which is a
cooking
loan.
outside big pots. And I'm thinking, do they know how much this is going to accumulate later that they will still be required to pay back? And now they are celebrating quite all right, but this will actually have an effect later on. And then imagine they don't get employed after college, after waiting in school for about 4 years. Now, calculating all of that, and now I'm actually been driven to think we need to do a whole lot more sensitization and education with finance in Zambia, because these people feel actually in one of the comments, a parent came through and said, we're paying this much amount of tuition, accommodation, what do you call it? Stationary and transportations and whatnot. And I'm thinking, you are able to. So why don't we let the vulnerable, those who are really vulnerable, even attend to that, even though as much as I do not recommend for the vulnerable equally to go for that option, but if you can, go on for that, because later on you're just only but indebting your children to be paying these loans. Later on you probably won't even have the energy to help them pay back the loan. So if you can, see how you can come around and facilitate for their education. But now we've resorted to free things, and trust me, I think we have to be specific as well. We need to be just but deliberate with what we mean when people have a dependency syndrome. People are waiting to be given everything, free education. There's a bursary. They want to go to school for free, and now everyone is clinging on bursaries. And that's why whenever school's about to open, every grade 12 leaver of last year, you find them at HELB's office waiting to or get an application and be accepted into university to have free education, to be educated for free, being spoon fed. The CDF people are waiting to be given free money to go and squander and use them in the name of lucrative activities. What happens later on? The Ministry of Youth and Sports says what? 3 to 4% has been recovered from huge sums of amounts of money. Where's that leading us? Absolutely. We need to really but be particular. People are misusing a lot of money in the country.
There's something here, and I'm gonna add in one more thing. You've actually just reignited something in my mind, especially this issue of student debt. It often boils down to the fact that nobody educates parents on the cost that they're probably going to incur and the risk. What I would like to actually even see us do is do an income tax advantage for parents who can save for their children's education early. I'm saying this because this is something practiced in the US where you can do something called a tax advantage 529 savings plan. That's what it's called. 529 education savings plan does this for them. As a parent, you are allowed to, if you earn, let's say, $5,000, you're allowed to take $500 out of your income and put it into a savings plan, and that reduces your taxable income. So are we able to then support parents in this country having a certain threshold that they can put aside for their children's education? It should be equal to the amount that you'd be able to save for a child's education. And I remember I have that savings table for wealth tables where I've talked about how much we should be looking at putting aside for a parent. How much we should be looking at putting aside for a parent who'd like to save for their children's education going forward. I'll pull those numbers out a little bit later, but I just wanted to pull those out for people to think very carefully that if you look at that as an option, perhaps you can say if the average salary, for example, Vernon, is 6,700. If the average salary in this country is 6,700 kwacha, perhaps what we can say to parents is that maybe up to 630 or somewhere between 600 and 900 kwacha. In fact, yeah, 630 kwacha per month. You can say you can have 630 kwacha per month deducted from your taxable income, reduced your taxable income, and I know it may not do too much per child for you to be able to save for your children's education. This may encourage the parents who can afford it to save for their children's education as opposed to pushing their children to go and get a student loan. So I think that might be the better thing that we might try and do. And I think this is where I'd like us to close today. I know that people are used to us pushing this up to 9, but yes, we are going to allow Africa Business Report to return back to its normal time. I know that I've been eating that time. But I am thinking, Vernon, that one of the policies we should be thinking about is a tax incentive plan to support parents to start saving. And I think we've done the calculation here that a number, if you're a parent, and I'm going to try and share this screen, just forgive me for a second. I'm going to try and share this screen so that you can see it, and it's not going to be the best of screens, but you're going to have to live with me on this one. But basically, this is the what we have as the amount that a parent. I don't know if that's visible, Vernon.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so this is the recommended, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. This is the recommended amount a person should be saving on a monthly basis up to the age of 20. Now, it's up to the age of 20. Why I do believe that is that somewhere between 18 and 20, give your child some part-time work to go and do. Let them go and work before they go to college. I know people don't like that comment, but it actually might be a good idea. Let them get some work experience. But basically, this is saying that if your child is 0 years old, you can save 160 to get them to a local diploma, 165 kwacha, to get them to a local degree, 440. I'm going to focus on these ones here, not these other extravagant ones. And if you want to save for your child's local, if you want to start at the age of 4 with 0 saved, 237 gets them a local diploma. 632 is the recommended savings and investment amount to be putting into a fixed income fund to get them to a local degree. 8 years old, 962 should be what gets them towards a local degree. 360 a local diploma. Beyond then, this is starting a bit too late. So what I'm thinking is that we should actually be encouraging a lot more parents now to start putting aside a lot more money, especially the ones who have just gotten children born, and give them a tax incentive to be able to do that. And what you can do is that on their pay as you earn or any form of taxes that they're paying, you can actually you can reduce that income by that taxable amount. So let's say somebody, Vernon, is earning 10,000 kwacha, and they've got 2 children, and they're paying 900 kwacha per child. In terms of savings, they're saving 900 kwacha per child. Well, then you reduce their taxable income down to 1,900. Down to 8,200 as opposed to the 10,000, and you start taxing them from that to give them the incentive to push this money in. If they move this money out for any reason other than education fees, then they will be taxed the full amount with interest to the government. That is a way to actually make sure that that money goes to exactly what it's meant for. And what it'll do is that the people who will be now seeking that support will be people who needed it. Okay, and I want to leave that there, Vernon, to say these are the policies I think that should support. These are the 8 policies I think, as a quick recap, simply turnover tax adjustment, GRZ bond coupon should be tax-free, big business incentive to do business with small businesses, big banks incentives to loan to small businesses, the implementation of the graduated tax, a cap on regulatory fees to fit into a means test of 5,000 to 10,000 startup fees, higher education loans should be expanded to diplomas and certificates, tax incentives for large corporations to partner with Helsby to spend at least 0.5% of their revenue on scholarships in a centralized board, and parents should be given tax advantage savings plans to save for their children's college education, as opposed to making them send their children for student loans at the end, or probably even liquidating their pension to do it. I think those are the policies I think should be thought about in the 2024 budget, and we are going to push for them now, starting now. And that's where we end today, my brother.
Thank you so very much. I'm sure people are surprised why is it ending so soon, but we'll do more tomorrow.
Have a good day. Cheers.
Thank you.